I'm going to demonstrate a variety of mistakes and how we might fix them. But one important thing is the wrong side row is not your resting row. It's not the time to stop paying attention and just zoom across. What I want us to do is actually be looking at what we should be purling over. So for instance, right there, I'm going to purl over a decrease, but then I should be purling over a yarn over. So I want to be paying attention because if I notice, hey, wait a minute, there's no yarn over there, well, that's my chance to fix it. So here I'm purling my way across. There was that knit stitch. Here's the purl that's over the decrease, and I can see that's over the decrease, yay. But I should be purling over a yarn over here, and there is no yarn over. So notice there's a yarn over after the knit stitch, but oops, I forgot to make a yarn over. This is the easiest of all lace fixes to make, because what is a yarn over? It is nothing more than that running thread, right? The yarn between stitch number 1 and stitch number 2, right there, that made a detour over the needle. So I'm just going to give it a little wiggle and a jiggle, and I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to make it make a detour over the needle. So there it is, and then of course, I would purl it. Ta-da! Fixed. But I want to pretend that I didn't notice. Now I'm going to finish the row, and I'll come back the other way and see what happens if I miss a yarn over on the wrong side row. Then can I fix it? I'm working my way across on row 10, and I'm right up to where I should have 2 stitches before this purl bump. I have done my yarn over, knit 2 together, knit 1, but I mean SSK, but I should be able to do a knit 2 together here before the purl, but I can't because there's only 1 stitch. So I know, uh-oh, something's gone wrong. See, I can't do that knit 2 together because I only have 1 stitch left. Oh no! So this is where I look to see what was below that. Uh-oh, what was below that should have been a yarn over. That's why I'm 1 stitch short. So remember, that was the yarn over that I said we could have fixed on the wrong side row had we been paying attention, but then I pretended I wasn't. All right, so let's take a look. And here you can see I have 1 yarn over right there. Then I have the knit stitch, but there's supposed to be another yarn over. So here I am on the right side row, which means this running thread down here, the second one, was the yarn over, and the first one would have purled it. So what I want to do is take that right needle, just go under, and you can do this with the left needle too, it's whichever is more comfortable for you. I'm going to go under that running bar, 2 below, and I'm going to scoop up the running bar that is 1 below. I like to do it with my right needle because then I can just doink, pop it onto my left needle and I'll be ready to work it. So there's that missing yarn over. So let's look at that again. So you can give a little wiggle and a jiggle to that fabric to loosen that up. So there's the running bar that would have been my yarn over. Get that up on my needle, give it a little jiggle, and scoop up the running bar above it that would have been the purl. So now I've restored that stitch, and now lo and behold, I have 2 stitches left, and I am able to do that knit 2 together. So that's correcting a yarn over from the public side. Now I did make another mistake on purpose over here, which is after this purl, I forgot on purpose to do my SSK. So I am going to finish this row and I'm going to purl back, and I'm going to take a look at the uh-oh moment there of forgetting to put in a decrease. Another reason that we really pay attention working the wrong side row is so we can catch any mistakes on the right side row before moving to the next lace row and having it all not work out. So I know that I should be purling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 stitches. But here I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. Uh-oh. I have 16 stitches before that knit. Okay, so I want to actually take this one out and I want to turn around and I want to look to see what happened. So it's much easier to read your knitting from the public side. So the first thing I'm going to look at are the easy things. I'm going to look at the holes and I'm going to see, okay, do I have an extra yarn over somewhere? Because if I have one too many stitches, either I have an extra yarn over or I have an extra decrease. Now, I don't have an extra yarn over because all of my holes match up, right? I should have from the previous row 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have here from the previous row 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means a decrease is not there. Now, this is all lined up so far. So I'm suspicious that something has gone awry at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and first start looking at the beginning of the row and see that I should have an SSK knit 1, knit 2 together yarn over, which makes 3 stitches before the yarn over. But I see what I have here on my needle is 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches before the yarn over. So one of the decreases was missed. So here I can see I did this decrease. You can see 2 columns of stitches going into one slanting to the right. So that's what you're looking for, that right slanting, which means I didn't do the SSK. So these 2 stitches were supposed to have been decreased. So what I need to do, sorry, actually these 2 stitches, what I need to do is drop them off the needle at this point and make the decrease. Now, I haven't purled over them yet, so I only have to drop down 1 row. So one thing you can do if it makes you nervous is you can put your needle into the row below and then pull out that stitch, because now there's that 1 stitch quote unquote dropped, but it's safely onto your left needle. And then do the same thing. Put your needle in to the row below. So you can pull up on that yarn a bit and put that needle into the row below. And I can pull this out. Okay, so now I have the 2 stitches off of my needle and there's my running thread. So I can do one of 2 things. I can actually reorientate the stitches and knit them like an SSK. So there's that missing left slanting decrease. Do that again. So remember, these were Western mounted, so I need that first stitch to do a slip as if to knit, right? So that I can put my needle in the hole and have that not be twisted. So I can put that in, and if I'm a continental knitter, I can tuck that over my finger and actually knit that. If I'm a thrower, I can kind of pick it up. It's a little harder to do if you're a thrower. Pick it up and kind of throw it around and knit it. Now you're going to have extra slack, which we're going to look at redistributing. If you're more of a crochet hook kind of person, then you could also do it with a crochet hook. The important thing is that you have to go through the first stitch, then the second stitch, because remember with an SSK, It's the stitch that ends up on, whatever your needle enters is the stitch that ends up on top. So if my crochet hook or my needle enters stitch number 1, that's what ends up on top, and that's how it slants to the left. So once I get them both on my crochet hook, I can ladder them up, and there's that drop stitch, and I can put it back on the needle. Remember, when we're laddering up a stitch and we put it back on a needle, we want to put it on as if to knit, meaning the needle and the hook are in the same direction. If the needle and hook are in opposite directions, like head-on collision, do you see how that stitch is going to be mounted eastern? Which is not a big deal because you know, as experienced knitters, you're going to put the needle in the hole. Now, for more information on fixing mistakes, I have a class called Knitting ER that covers all the basics. And I also have an advanced knitting fixes that covers fixes on shaping, cables, colorwork, lace, while your stitches are still alive on the needle. And then the second of the DVD set is crazy fixes that you can do when, oh my God, I've cut my knitting. And I've already finished, and I can fix things after they're done. Oops, sorry, I started purling backwards out of sheer habit. Sorry. All right, so let's purl across that, and we'll take a look at the slack that's created there. So now I really and truly only have 15 stitches. Huzzah! So there's I have a knit, and then I have 3 purls. I purl backwards so often that this feels like I'm going backwards. Isn't that crazy? Then I have my slip with, whoops, wait a minute. Yeah, did I count wrong? Yeah, I have my slip with yarn in front. Then I have my purl 4. Okay, so let's turn this around and we'll look at the slack. And the nice thing about slack and lace is it's pretty easy to move in to the yarn overs. I'm just going to pull that down to the cable. So there's that big loosey-goosey stitch, right? And it's loosey-goosey because we used enough yarn to knit 2 stitches where really we only wanted 1. So that's the problem. So this is normally, it's a little easier to do when there's lots of fabric above it, but I'll just show it to you now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tug on that loose stitch, and I'm just going to move the slack around into other stitches until it looks a little less obvious. Give a little wiggle and a jiggle. So there, much, much better. You can futz with it a little more if you want. You know, like I said, I always like to move it into the yarn over because it's a little, you know, worst thing that happens is one yarn over gets a little larger. But there you go. We have fixed that boo-boo. Of course, when I hold it far away from the camera, it goes out of focus. Wah, wah. But there we fixed that boo-boo. So we learned how to pick up a yarn over from the purl side, how to pick up a yarn over from the knit side, how to rebuild a missing decrease. So I'm just going to keep knitting, and I want to show you tinking of all the stitches, because another thing that can happen is you're working a row, you immediately do a wrong stitch, and you just want to take it out right then and there. So I'm going to go ahead and keep knitting, and I'm going to get to, I'm going to knit over, knit 2 together, yarn over, and the double left slanting decrease, and the SSK, and we'll take that entire row out. Okay, see you in a bit. I've worked my way across row 12, and that has a knit 2 together, the SK 2P, slip knit 2 together, pass over, and the SSK. So now I want to tink across this row, taking all of these stitches out while leaving my stitches properly mounted. So the first thing about tinking is we don't turn our work around. If when we knit, our yarn is coming from the first stitch off of the right needle, and the needle that we're working onto is the right needle, when we tink, we do it exactly in reverse. So there's that yarn, Instead of turning it around, the yarn is still coming off of the right needle, but now I'm working onto the left needle. Now to tink a purl, I want to have the yarn in front, because you'll notice if I move that yarn to the back, it kind of closes up that hole. What I want to do when I tink is I want to put the needle into the same hole, front to back, that yarn is coming out of. So there's a tink of a purl, and now when I tink a knit, I move the yarn to the back, I put the needle in front to back through the same stitch it's coming out of. We cover all of this in knitting ER. Okay, but here's that SSK, and you can tell it's an SSK because it slants to the left. So one thing about an SSK, I'm just going to make an SSK quickly. Depending on whether you do my one move SSK, which only is the equivalent of slipping the first stitch as if to knit, opening up that, reversing that first stitch mount, but leaving the second one twisted. Will have to do with how you have to mount them back on the needle. But what I wanted to show you is when I knit the SSK, watch the exit path of the left needle. Wherever that exit path is, it re-enters the same way. So to tink an SSK, you need to enter back to front, not front to back, but back to front. And then you'll still have to flip whatever stitch mount you've changed. So here's my SSK. And remember, I only flipped the stitch mount of the first stitch. So if I enter back to front, and what I'm going to do is pause and make sure that I have 2 stitches on that needle and that the needle's going in the same hole the yarn is coming out. So there it is, back to front, and I remove the stitch. And all I have to do is flip that mount back around. Like say I worked the wrong row, or I worked the wrong stitch. I did an SSK where I meant to do a knit 2 together, and I needed to take it out right away. There's my knit. For a yarn over, you just let it fall off the needle. There's a knit, and again for the yarn over, you just let it fall off the needle. But here is that double left slanting decrease. Slip 1, knit 2 together, pass over. So when we tink that, we're going to do that in reverse. Unslip, unknit 2 together. Unpass over, unknit 2 together, and then reslip. So there's that knit stitch. I'm just going to tink it by putting the needle into the same hole the yarn's coming out of. So remember, this was slip, knit 2 together, pass over. So the first thing I'm going to do is unpass over. I'm going to take that elongated stitch and I'm going to unpass it over. And what's left is a knit 2 together. Now I tink a knit 2 together by inserting the needle front to back, just like I do when I tink a knit, except this time I want to make sure that I have 2 stitches on the needle. So there we go, tinked. And of course we end by slipping back. So it's literally everything in reverse. If I made it by slipping, knitting 2 together, passing over, I tink it by unpassing over, undoing my knit 2 together, and slipping back. Ta-da! So to tink the knit 2 together, you've actually already seen it. It's just inserting the needle into not 1 stitch, but 2. But I'll go ahead and do it again, because I said I'd take out the whole row, and I'm not a liar. So there it is. I can see that it's slanting to the right, and I'm going to put my needle through both stitches front to back, and out they come. So I'm going to finish up this row, and I'm actually going to work my way up to row 16 that has the central double decrease, and we'll look at tinking that, because that's the only other stitch you have to know how to tink in your lace. Okay? The central double decrease has the middle stitch going on top of stitch 1 and 2, 1 and 3. So first I'm just going to make one, and then I'm going to take it apart. So again, the best way to avoid making a mistake, let's pretend I was about to put it in the wrong place. The best place to avoid way to fix mistakes is to avoid making them. So if I was about to put my central double decrease in here, I can see, oh, wait, that does make sense. It lines up right there, right on top of that trinity. So always slow down, look at what's on your needle, make sure it's the right place. So if we're going to do Patty's trick, slip 2 as if to do a knit 2 together, put them back onto the needle, wiggle the tip of the needle into the 3rd stitch, and then knit all 3 together. Again, watch the exit path of that left needle. It exits, whoop, going to the back, which means when we tink it, we do the same thing for the re-entry. We're going to put that needle back to front through the stitches. But I want to pause to make sure I really and truly have all 3 stitches on the needle. Then I can pull the yarn out. But remember, we slipped 2 as if to do a knit 2 together. So now you have to flip them back around and put them back where they came from. If you did the traditional, not my trick, but the regular way, which is slip 2 as if to do a knit 2 together, knit 1, and then pass these guys over. Just want to show you there's one extra move you have to do to tink it because you knit that stitch. So when I insert the needle back to front through all 3 stitches and I pull that yarn out, not only do I have to flip these 2 around, but also I'll have to flip the stitch mount of that one around. With my trick, because I twist that stitch on purpose, that stitch mount is never turned around. So let's look at that one more time. Here I'll tink my way back to the other one. Here I have another one. Okay. So there's my other central double decrease. So again, and it really doesn't matter whether you pick or throw, but again, I'm going to insert that needle back to front through all 3 stitches. And I am going to pause to make sure I see 3 loops on my needle before I pull that out. And then I can flip those guys back around. So remember, when you're approaching your lace, do it mindfully. Read your stitches, read your knitting. Make sure everything is stacking up correctly. If we're just kind of mindlessly following the chart for the row that we're doing, but not paying attention to how it stacks up on the chart and how that matches exactly how it stacks up on our knitting, we're going to make more mistakes. More mistakes means more ripping out. More ripping out means we're going slower.